I'm Leila. Welcome back to my channel. Today's video will be extra special because today we're going to work on one of my, I would say, most favorite things to draw. One of the favorite things to draw. And of course, if you love to draw animals, this is the second most important thing to know how to draw. What's the first one, you'll ask? Well, that's of course structuring your animal first. And knowing how to draw fur well can make your animal sketches absolutely amazing. So today you can choose to follow along and practice some fur drawing, or you can sit back and relax, perhaps after a busy day, because this video will be extra relaxing, soothing, and just like fur itself, very comforting. So when do you usually start looking and trying to learn how to draw fur? That's usually when you're already in the middle of drawing an animal. By that stage, you might already be struggling. So before you start drawing an animal, I suggest that you pay close attention to something that you might find that's furry, especially if you can find something with a similar type of fur. For example, I've got this fabric, but it's like a fur fabric, and it's very nice. It's very sort of a maybe like a cat or a dog fur, or kind of a like, I don't know, maybe even a wolf. It's too soft to be a wolf, but still you've got that sort of a feel. You can look at the texture. You might also find other furs, and I might have a little bit of a different texture. Like this one is much softer, much fluffier, almost like sort of a between feathers and fur. And when you look at the fur, don't just look at overall picture. It looks fluffy. That's probably the first thing that people would say when they look at fur. But what you really want to do is you want to really study it. Look at how easy it is to move. Touch it if you get a chance to. And see how soft it is or how coarse it is. Also, pay attention to how dense the fur is. If you would like me to show you how to do different textures and different furs, let me know as well. But for now, I'm gonna put this one aside. It's so soft, it's so squishy. I love fur. I'm just drawn to it like crazy. Okay, and we will focus on this one. So here are the materials that we would need to use today to draw this fur. A couple of smudge sticks, or even one would do. A really fine pencil, mechanical pencil, maybe a couple of regular pencils, a petty rubber, and just your normal mechanical eraser as well. Okay, so the first thing you want to look at is how large you want to create your area that you want to make look like fur. So something around like this, I think, should be sufficient enough. The first thing, as I said, you need to do is you need to pay very close attention to how dark the fur is. Is it a light fur? Is it, for example, like a tiger fur that has stripes? So with this one, it's quite monotone. We've got a little bit of the highlight going, but it's mainly gray with somewhat darker and somewhat lighter a little hair strands. You can see on the side here as well. It's really, really soft. Okay, so to start with, we're going to just very softly cover the area that you want to recreate your fur on. And next, I'm going to use the smudge stick. And notice how instead of going all over the place, I'm still using that direction. have my base. From this, I'm going to build the very similar layers over it, but now I'm going to go in a slightly different direction. So if this was going like that, again, that's because of this type of fur. If this was, for example, a llama-like fur, or if it was a bit softer, then there would be a different approach. If you guys would like me to show you how to draw other fur, like for example maybe sheep wool or something like that, do let me know in the comments and I'd be more than happy to show you. Because these are the tricky parts and there aren't many videos out there that cover this topic as well, so if anyone's struggling, I think they would find this very helpful. So this is kind of like if you are doing a cross-hatching, but not quite, you're still going a little bit softer than what you would if you were doing cross-hatching. And again, so if you look closely, you can already see the pattern that we're creating. We're creating that sort of fur over fur look, kind of like what we see here. Now I'm gonna go for the thinner pencil and kind of go in between these two directions. So one was going this way, another one was going that way. So now I'm going across in between the two. So you can see that it's building up slowly, getting to that sort of a grayish color that we're looking for. And again, I'm gonna go over with a smudge stick. If you don't have a smudge stick, you can use maybe a piece of tissue or even little earbuds and things like that. But these are very not expensive. You can see I still have a price tag on this, $2.80, so they're very affordable and really easy to use. So you see, again, I'm just going in one direction. I'm not going all over, because if I'm going all over, I'm smudging it completely without any pattern left. So I want to create softness, bring softness to my lines, but not completely smudge it into oblivion. So this is what you want to do as well. And you see now, it's almost like I'm patting it with a smudge stick, because you can already see the texture of the fur coming through. Next, I'm gonna go for the mechanical pencil. Now this is just your usual 0.5. If you've got 0.7, still works just as well. If you don't have one of those and you are following along and you don't want to get out and go to the shops, maybe you're in a lockdown or something like that, then I suggest just grabbing your regular pencils and giving them a really good sharpening with a knife, so that you got a very nice, perfect, long, thin point. And you might have to do it a few times while you're working on this. But then again, it might take more time, but you would be able to do the job. And now I'm going over. At this stage, you know how before I went in one direction and then across and then again? So now with this one, what I'm going to do is sort of go in between all of these three directions. And again, I'm going quite lightly, so I'm not leaving really dark, very specific lines. Not just yet, we can do that later. So working like that creates a little bit more movement in the fur, because normally, like those of you that have a cat or a dog, you don't have like perfectly brushed animal every single time. So if you have an animal, and even when you're petting it, you would be able to see on here on this fur as well, you can see that some of the hairs are going this way and some of them are going in the other way, and they kind of like appear one from underneath the other. So this is the thing that you need to pay attention to. And as I said, different furs have a different way of appearing to us because of their texture, because of their density, because of the shine. That's why it's important to study your fur before you start drawing it. And even with things like, for example, okay, if you're drawing your cat, for instance, you can, you know, touch your cat, look at your cat, feel it, give it a good scratch. But if you are working on a tiger, I mean, what are you gonna say? Leila, are you crazy? You're telling us to what? Go to the zoo, jump over to the tiger and give it a good squishing around because I want to draw it? Don't, okay? Don't do that. That never ends well. But what you can do is get some close-up pictures of the fur alone, just to have a look at it, because those pictures would be able to give you an idea of how thick each little strand of hair is, and as a rule, the thicker each strand is, the coarser the fur itself. So when you've got really, see, like here, for example, when you've got really, really fluffy, very, very fine, sort of a furry strands, you've got, and it's usually quite dense. It's really, really soft, really, really soft and very, very fluffy. But if you've got something, unfortunately, I don't have anything at the moment to show you, but if you've got fur that has really thick hairs, then it's usually much coarser. Like those of you that have big dogs like German Shepherd and things like that, like you can see how their fur is coarser than, for example, you know, your fluffy cats and things like that. And also, as a rule of thumb, the coarser the fur, the more likely it is to be shinier. Okay, when you've got really, really soft, very, very soft fur, there's usually so many hair strands that are going in different directions that you don't get that perfect shine. And as I said, if you are interested, let me know in the comments below. I will try and find different types of furs. I'll look around and see if I can do different demonstrations, because some fur is long and curly and some, you know, just lots of different things. Okay, so as I'm talking to you guys, I'm kind of still working on this, still shading it. If you are enjoying this video, make sure to go and check out my Patreon page. We're starting from just $2 a month. You can support this channel, and starting from $8 a month, you get access to all of the extra videos that I make on Patreon. So make sure to go over there and check it out. I will leave the link under the video. And building those layers up in such way, it's quite important, because if you don't, then it just looks like a shade, especially just, you know, a gray sort of spot. I've got those fur bits everywhere now from this fur. I think this fur is molting. Now let's have a look for our next step. And our next step is a patiraba. So don't worry, we haven't finished with the pencil. There'll still be more to come, but for this stage I want to use a little bit of this. When you are looking at this fur, I'll just move it across like that. When you're working on this fur, you can see how some of it sort of goes up and down, but it's because this is pretty much like a piece of fabric. When you're working on the animal, you still get that look. The only difference is that you get it on the body parts. So, for example, if you've got a dog and the dog's got rolls and things like that, you would be getting this sort of a look, right? So you will still get that, but more in the shape of the animal. You know, if you've got, I don't know, a cat with a tail, then you will probably have something like this. And that's why it's so handy to have real stuff in front of you that you can play with. You see? So now it's a real good visual aid for you to see what the fur on the tail might look like, or at least the direction. Okay, so now let's have a look. Because this is just some fur that I'm drawing, I'm not drawing a back of a cat or a neck of a dog. This is what I'm looking at. So I'm just gonna go a little bit light and a little bit darker, so just to give you that that look, so that you know what you need to do when you're drawing your piece of fur or an animal. So now I am going to add a little bit more of the highlights. So for example, just little lines, and I'm not really removing the graphite completely. This is just to tidy up on the edge. I'm just lightening it up a little bit, and still going in the same direction. I'm still doing the same thing. I'm not going like that, because then if you do, it will end up looking like a fabric, like a blanket, or you know, something woolly perhaps, but not fur. So going in the same direction. And now this is the trick. If there are any parts of the fur that are catching a bit more light, then you can add a little bit more of the highlights. And if it's quite a strong band, like for example, as I said, you know, if it's like a roll on your puppy dog or something like that, then you might want to go quite strong and quite bright within that area of the line. I'm not going to do that, as I said, because I'm working on this fur. But let me know in the comments if you want me to show you more, because as I said, drawing fur is the number 2 most important thing when you're drawing an animal. Number 1 is the structure. So now this is good. So you see, now we're sort of forming a little bit of the movement there, a little bit of the volume of the fur as well. At this stage, I'm gonna go back in with this pencil, and I'm going to create those sort of you know, those waves like that. I just love doing this. This is so fluffy. Okay. And at this stage, I can already go a little bit darker. But you see, I'm still going in that same direction, or approximately sort of a similar direction. Now, should I show you on this side here what it'll look like if the fur was finishing up like that, the fluffy bit? I think that would be really helpful as well, because if you are drawing an animal, for example, and you've got, you know, a fluffy animal and you can see that side of the back maybe, or something like that, that could be quite useful. Or sometimes when, for example, cats, you know, when they sit down to lick themselves, they kind of fold in a weird way and the fur really sticks out. So if you're drawing something like that, that could be helpful. So for that, what you want to do is pretty much do all the same stuff that we've done so far, but just on the side, you want to single out a few of the hairs like that. I will darken this area a bit more. And you see, now at this stage I can go darker in some areas, because if we pay attention to this, you can see that it sort of goes darker and lighter and darker and lighter, not just the color reflection, but also the natural sort of lighter and darker areas. And by the way, always check the cards, or you know, the end screens, because I usually choose videos that are similar to something that you're watching, and you might check them out, you might like them. So you see, now I'm going with darker shade, and now switch back to this pencil just to give me a little bit more of the width rather than the very fine thin lines. So switching in between would give you this really nicely sort of a brushed look. And again, I'm gonna go for the eraser. bring out some furry bits and go back to this for some more pronounced and defined fur bits. And you just keep going and going like that. Until you're happy with what you've got. If you've got darker fur, of course, you can go a bit stronger. And even to start with, the first layer can be darker as well. And see, these lines and these markings are kind of like, you know, these little markings that you get on the fur. Another tip that I can give you, if you are planning to do like a very serious drawing, artwork, and you would like to make sure that you've got your fur to perfection, you can actually do a little test like this. And then when you've done like a preliminary little patch, it can be even smaller, it doesn't have to be this size, it can be smaller. You know, you've had a go at it, you'd feel so much more confident when the time comes to actually try out your fur on the actual animal. At this stage, again, you can go over it with your smudge stick softly in the direction like how you would pet a cat, for example. So going along with the fur. And now I'm gonna go and add some even darker lines. So this is 8B. Probably do with a bit of sharpening. That's why I don't like pencils when they are sharpened by a sharpener. When you sharpen it with a knife, you've got just so much more control. And again, some smudging, just a little bit. And now I want to go and pick some of the brighter little highlighted fur, just to pick out some of these stronger highlighted little hairs. Now if you don't have one of those erasers, you can always grab one of these ones and just with your knife just give it a really thin little slice so that you have a really fine edge. And you can do that. If you keep doing it, this eraser won't last long, so if this is something that you're into, I would suggest to get this. I will also have links to some of the products that I use under the video, so you can check those out. And it's very, very handy, very useful. So it's kind of like drawing by taking away what you've applied, you know, your graphite that you've applied. And because I'm drawing this type of fur, I'm not doing it all even all over like some furs could be, but With this fur, I am, just trying to get all of that sort of a little bit of that misdirection in there. So next I'm going to work a little bit more on these darker sort of areas and some little fur strands that might go in a different direction. Okay, so I gave this pencil a sharpening and just going to do some more of the finer strands as well. You might ask, Leila, why do you need to go over with a razor and then build layers up if you're still going over these areas? The thing is, you see, when you've got little little erased lighter areas, even when you go over them with a dark sort of a pencil, you still get some areas peeking through, lighter and some a little bit darker and so on. That's what gives you that really soft sort of a three-dimensional look to the fur that you're drawing. So don't skip any of those steps, even though it might seem pointless, it's not. It's important. Okay, so now let's get back to this edge that I want to show you how to do sort of more of a fluffy kind of a look. Right, so when you've got sort of a fluffy little things sticking out, but in a very similar way as you're working on this, just a bit more sort of a sparse, a little bit more space between them. And now I'm just going to clean some of this stuff up. Also try to avoid rubbing with your hand on there. So if you are drawing, try not to do this all the time. So you see how I'm doing this, but I'm actually pressing this part of my arm onto the board, onto the paper, and having this part hanging over. If you keep doing this, you'll just keep smudging everything all over. So we're almost done. So at this stage you can pretty much leave it, because it's quite a good representation of this type of fur. I know I did do it a little bit more sort of a darker areas just to make it look a little bit more interesting. If you want it more plain, just keep going everything in the same direction without these darker areas. When you're pretty much done, what you can do is you can go over some of the little highlights again, because with all the sort of using this and all of the other stuff, it usually just becomes just a little bit more smudged. And I'm going to do the same thing with a fine pencil, just to add a couple of strong little lines like that. Okay, so at this stage I would say I'm done. If you have a piece of fur that's similar to this but a bit darker, you can carry on until you darken it to the level that you want. In fact, if you're working on a darker fur, I would suggest to even start off with darker layers, you know, that first preliminary layer that we did. I'd suggest to even go darker with that, and vice versa. If you are working on a lighter fur, then you can you know, something like, I don't know if that's much lighter, though it's not really, maybe this is a bit lighter. If you're working on something like this, then you can of course create your whole area lighter. This is quite in-depth explanation, so I really hope that it helps if you've been struggling with, you know, trying to draw fur or animals or anything like this. So I hope this will be very helpful. Please let me know in the comments if you like this tutorial and if you would like me to show you more. Maybe there's a specific fur you want me to show you, like for example a horse mane, or how to draw some specific thing. So please let me know, and again I will break it down like this and show you everything step by step, so that when you are drawing you're not struggling. I hope you've enjoyed this video. I hope you got to practice a little bit of fur drawing. Let me know in the comments if you would like to see more of those kind of textured drawing tutorials, because textures can be a little bit hard sometimes. So either way, leave a comment down below. Don't forget to subscribe, give this video a like if you liked it. And I would like to say big thank you to my wonderful patrons. So thank you guys so much. And I hope you guys have a wonderful day. And as always, thank you for drawing with me.